So yesterday we talked about the defensive front seven for the University of Alabama, and today I'd like to focus on the secondary because this is another group that is hyper exciting. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. So hop down to the comments and give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you believe that the Alabama Crimson Tide will have another true freshman contribute early in the secondary? Remember, even though Patrick Surtain is leaving for the NFL draft, he's a first rounder, he contributed it as a freshman, so there could be another guy step up. Do you believe there will be? And who do you think it will be? If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification because I do constant college football content, player reviews, film analysis, talk style videos like this, and I'm on my push to 5,000 subscribers within my first year, and I'd love to have you along for the journey. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to like and comment down below because that really does go a long ways in helping content creators like myself get picked up by the YouTube algorithm. But with all that being said, let's talk about this secondary. And the beautiful thing about the Alabama Crimson Tide this year is, like I said yesterday in yesterday's video, I'm very excited for the defensive front seven. I called my shot on Will Anderson after the Missouri game, and I'm not hesitating off of that, right? I'm very, very, very intrigued about the front seven for the University of Alabama. The thing I said that's so beautiful about this is if we got 15 people in a room and you ask the same question to everybody, which position group do you think is the most exciting? Sure, this is an opinion, but we can actually rationalize our opinions based on production returned, based on talent returned, based on the excitement of that talent returning. 5 stars, 4 stars. And the beautiful thing in this long-winded explanation is that there could be 4 or 5 different answers. If you ask 15 different people, what is the most exciting position group with the Alabama Crimson Tide? We could hear receivers, running backs, offensive line, defensive line, secondary, and they would all have a legitimate reason for that position to take. And because of that, it's very intriguing. And the secondary is certainly up there. And when we talk about the secondary, the Alabama Crimson Tide is blessed this year with only really losing one person in Pat Surtain. And so with that being said, let's talk about the secondary in this conditionality of the known versus the unknown. And what do we know? Well, we know that Patrick Surtain is going to be a top pick in the NFL draft, and replacing him, while doable based on the talent you have and the excitement of this talent, like I just said, is not easy. And I'm not even saying, even though I think that Alabama can replace Patrick Surtain, I'm not even contending that whoever replaces him even gets near what he's able to do. Maybe they are, because Alabama has a bunch of talented guys, but maybe they aren't, because Surtain is a top 15 pick in the draft by all metrics right now. You don't just spring those guys on trees, right? I mean, he's a special player. But if you were to spring them on trees, there's a few guys for Alabama that I think could be it. And so let's start with that position within the secondary, where the biggest loss happens at cornerback 1. Now, there's a few schools of thought as to what could happen here. We could see a guy step up like a Jalen Armour-Davis and take that role, or we could see Josh Jobe slide over. The thing that I'm looking at, and the reason I asked the question in the very beginning, is twofold. One, for Pat's spot, and the reason I brought up that he started as a freshman, there are 2 corners coming in that are very talented that I believe will and can be vying for early playing time. First is Kyrie Jackson, the number 2 JUCO corner in the nation. He's a guy who stands 6'3", but has a 6'4" wingspan. Very athletic guy and very rangy and long. It's going to be very hard to just beat him because of his length. And if you can get him coached up with Coach Saban and the boys, you're talking about a dangerous, dangerous weapon in the defensive secondary. The other guy I'd like to talk about who's new that could be taking that role, and it's a long shot, but it could happen, is JaQuincy McKinstry. And if there's a guy I think that could contribute on this secondary, it's certainly him. Every time I turn on his film, he's got some of the best ball skills in all of the nation, whether that's receiver or cornerback out of last year. I truly, truly do believe that if he was to declare as a receiver last year, he would have been a 5-star receiver, one of the top receivers in the nation, because he has ball skills that are better than almost every other receiver from last year's class, and he plays corner. And I'm not saying that as a slight to any receiver. I'm saying that because his ability to play the ball in air is nothing short of elite. Go back and watch his film, and it is unbelievable how well he is able to take his eyes off of the guy in front of him, off of the receiver, and look back and track the football accurately. I mean, this is stuff that you're usually getting down in your mid-years in college, and he is fluid in it right now. he's a guy who could come in and start. We've seen the Alabama Crimson Tide start freshmen in the secondary last year with Malachi Moore, then Brian Branch getting some duties, Patrick Surtain. I think JaQuincy McKinstry is a guy that to me is going to be very hard to keep off the field. It really just depends how they look in the spring practice, but either way, very exciting. Outside of that, like I said, the Tide returns a ton of experience. You have Job on one side, Armour Davis will be competing with a plethora of people, and even then, there are so many guys on the back burner at Alabama. There could be a number of dudes get this starting nod for Pat's spot, or Job's spot, depending on what they do with Job. But the thing that's going to be super interesting to me is we've talked about how Armour Davis is there. The star position is accounted for in Malachi Moore. I have a feeling that in dime packages, Brian Branch will probably be the money. It all just depends what they really want to do with Malachi Moore, but I think they're going to be looking to put Malachi Moore and Brian Branch on the field at the same time in those more pass-heavy packages. The real intrigue to me in the secondary, outside of Pat's available spot, comes at the safety position. Now, Alabama had a little bit of a surprise when Daniel Wright declared to come back for another year. And the reason why that's surprising is because he might not be the favorite to re-land his old job, right? And that right there is really intriguing to me. DeMarco Hellams might be the favorite to land that job, and there's a kid coming in, Terrion Arnold, who I think is going to be hard-pressed to keep off the field. If I had to comp Terrion Arnold to an NFL player, he reminds me strikingly a lot of Derwin James. And so when you think about it like that, it could be almost impossible not to have Arnold and Jordan Battle on the field at the same time. And as good as Hellams is, I do expect Hellams to be able to beat Wright. I like Daniel Wright. I think that his upside is there, but he's never been able to really put it together continuously. He'll show flashes of why, like, oh yeah, that's why this dude is starting in the defensive secondary, but it's never been able to continue, whereas Hellams really almost had that Jalen Moody analogy I use. He came in and he was just worried about his job, which made his play look so elite. And it was. I mean, he was very good in his time coming in because he was focused on his job, which allowed everybody else to do their job better. It's so difficult in football when you're focused on your job and then you look up and you're thinking, why are they not doing their job? So you try and overcompensate and then you get beat. Hellams is a guy who's only focused on his job. And so while the secondary is super exciting, it is a little bit of a boring conversation in this regard because they return so much continuity. But the areas that are up for grabs are super competitive right now. You have guys who are on campus who easily any other year would get this nod, if not for a Kyrie Jackson, if not for a JaQuincy McKinstry. And we haven't even talked about a guy like Kane Williams, who, as much as I like Terrion Arnold, Kane Williams, if he ended up getting that starting nod, while it would be surprising, I don't think anybody would be quote-unquote shocked because he is that talented. So with all that being said, my early prediction, personally, is going to be Jordan Battle at strong safety. The free safety will probably be either Hellams or Terrion Arnold. Cornerback 1 will probably either be Job. Cornerback 2 will probably, in my opinion, be JaQuincy McKinstry. I'm calling my shot now. I think that kid is unbelievable. I really don't know how you're going to be able to keep him off the field. And like I said, if Alabama wants to keep Job at cornerback 2, I think McKinstry or Kyrie Jackson have the ability to play that cornerback 1 role. And so it really just depends what you want to do. And then at the star position, you're not taking that away from Malachi Moore. There's nobody on this roster who's taking away star from Malachi Moore. The only reason Malachi Moore might get moved off of star is so that he can do something else for the Alabama Crimson Tide coaching staff. But it's not going to be like, oh, well, this person's better at that job. I love Brian Branch. Malachi Moore is a very special player, and he's going to have a very special year. So, once again, strong safety, Battle. I'm calling my shot at free safety. It's probably either going to be Arnold or Hellams. At cornerback 1, we'll say Job for the sake of this conversation. Cornerback 2, I'm going to say JaQuincy McKinstry is going to really separate himself, and he might be that guy. But any of the other guys, Armour Davis, Kyrie Jackson, there's so many talented guys that could get that position. At the star, Malachi Moore all day. In dime packages, look for Malachi Moore and Brian Branch to be on the field at the same time. And outside of that, I think that the Crimson Tide secondary is a very exciting group. They're very talented. And this secondary could be better than last year's secondary just because last year they relied so much on some youth in like a Malachi Moore. He doesn't really have youth anymore. He got a full season in, and he's going to be looking to make his mark on college football as a whole. But all that being said, I can't wait to hear from y'all. Hop down to the comments, let me know who you're looking for in this Alabama Crimson Tide secondary to really separate themselves and show. This is going to be an awesome battle to watch because I really think that this is an area where there are certain position groups in the Alabama Crimson Tide that are easy to talk about, but they're difficult to predict because there are so many plausible scenarios, and this is absolutely one of them. That's it. See ya.